in business, a lot of times, like, you might be dealing with another business, right? So let's say, like, a lot of our transactions, we have to deal with title companies and closing attorneys, and they might be representing our borrower, so they're kind of in the middle, and they don't want to hear our BS and all this stuff. So it's just shortened to the point. Like, I need this, this, and this. Have a good day. Bye. Welcome to Burning the Ships podcast, and I'm your host, Jason Seward. And today I'm going to talk about the boat theory, which is kind of fitting with the title of this show, or the name of this podcast, Burning the Ships. We're kind of keeping things on the water today with the boat theory. But I'll kick it off with kind of telling a story, the story of the boat theory, and then I'm going to get into everything of how this applies to life and business and everything like that. So something I heard recently from, I think it was a book I was reading, and this has been a couple months ago. It's kind of been stuck in my mind, and I made some notes in my phone about it, and then I circled back to it recently. I was like, that'd be a good podcast episode, so we're going to roll with it. The boat theory. So let me set the stage with a story. So you are out on a lake. It's calm, everything's cool, and you're relaxed, and you're out in a kayak or a boat, just a rowboat. You're moving along and very relaxed. Could not be in a better frame of mind, right? You're happy. Everything is perfect at that moment. It's quiet, calm, everything's great. And all of a sudden, bam, you get hammered by another boat out of nowhere. You didn't hear it coming. You didn't see it coming. It just slams right into the back of you. It jars you. You're shook up, shakes you up a little bit, and immediately you see that it was a boat, and you are pissed. You are mad because somebody just didn't see you and slammed into your boat, right? So that initial reaction of being shaken up now has turned into anger, and you are ready to take it out on somebody, right? You're mad at them. How could they do this? What's this idiot thinking? All those things are festering, and you turn around because the boat kind of hits you from an angle on the backside, and you turn around, you see a boat there, but you don't see anybody in the boat. There's not a person in the boat, and you realize the boat had just kind of, I guess, gone off on its own, and the wind blew it into you and knocked into you and knocked you silly. And you realize that it wasn't somebody. It wasn't an idiot. It wasn't somebody that made a bad choice or something like that, or was driving crazy on the boat. It just happened. A boat randomly came across this lake and slammed into you. So your anger, which was, you're ready to fight somebody, right? They just slammed into you. Your anger went away. Now that's out, and now you're confused. How'd this boat get here and stuff like that? But you're no longer angry, right? Your mood, you can recover from where you were now and get back into a good mood, realizing like, okay, I'm not hurt. Everything's fine. And there's nobody to be angry at, right? Because there's nobody to be angry at, and there's no reason to be angry. There's nothing to be mad at anymore, other than maybe a little bit of inconvenience and scared you a little bit. But all that anger goes out the window, right? So what's the lesson in this story? And I think it's pretty obvious, when you hear me tell it that way, what the lesson is, that most of the time in life, we attach our emotions into assumptions of the situation, right? So the easiest analogy that we can all relate to, remove the boat and everything like that, and let's say you get rear-ended at a stoplight, right? You're sitting at a stoplight, you're minding your business, and boom, car hits you from behind. Well, unless it's a Waymo, or if anybody's familiar with Waymos, those are like the self-driving Uber type cars now, but unless it's that, somebody was driving that vehicle, right? All of us have had something like that happen, where either we got hit by another car, or we got cut off in traffic, or something dangerous that scared us happened, and we immediately go to anger, right? Most people immediately go to anger. How could that person, this idiot, what are they thinking? They're going to kill me, blah, blah, blah. You're just mad, right? What we rarely do in those situations is, yes, somebody was driving that vehicle, but what was going on? Could it have been they just found out that someone in their family was just in a car accident themselves, being med flighted to the hospital, and they're in a rush. They don't have their brains and wits about them. They're driving in a rush to check on or see if their family's that member is still alive or whatever's going on. So they're just all out of sorts, not paying very much attention. They slammed into the back of you. Could be that, right? Um, Knowing that, would you still be angry at that person? I would hope not. If you would be, you're not a very compassionate person. You can be inconvenienced and it sucks, and but if you're not hurt, injured, or anything like that, all it is an inconvenience. Um, but we make these assumptions, just like the boat. We assume that somebody was driving the boat and it made us angry. Like we're ready to fight. We're ready to fight whatever that is, right? Or in the car, we get rear-ended or cut off, we immediately go to anger. We're ready to confront that person with anger and let them know how they made us feel and what we're going to do about it, right? So it's a confrontational situation where sometimes it might be, like a lot of times, it might be just a very aggressive person that there's no other reason they cut you off or rear-ended you other than they are irresponsible and aggressive, and you have every right to be angry at them, right? But you don't know that. You don't know that situation. So in life, a better practice is to operate from the standpoint that, and this is how I try to operate, right? It doesn't always work. I get angry and I get irrationally emotional sometimes, whether it's, on the road or whatever the case may be, just making assumptions. But most of the time I try to operate that everybody's else out there that I'm confronting in life every day, every situation, they're approaching it with good intent, right? And good intent. And I know that not everybody is. I know that some people will see a car and just be having a bad day and slam into it, right? That happens. It's crazy, but it happens. So that could be the case. And for that, I would be very angry and upset, and I'd want to confront that person about that situation. But there's also, more times than not, there's something going on. What's weighing on them, right? What has them distracted? Did they find out they just had cancer? They just found out they have cancer. Did they find out their mother has 3 months to live because she has cancer? Did they find out that their wife is going into labor, and they're rushing to the hospital to see their first kid born or any kid born, right? So there's, more likely than not, if they have cut you off or rear-ended you or something like that, they're distracted by something. Hopefully it's not their phone and they're texting, which, yeah, you have a right to be upset about that or mad. But a lot of times it's just they're distracted by something in their life. Doesn't make it right. Definitely doesn't make it right. I'm not using the car analogy to say everybody has a right to go out there when they don't have their emotions in check and drive chaotically. But if you're watching this or listening to this and you are a driver of a vehicle, you cannot tell me that at any point in your driving career that you've gotten behind the wheel of a vehicle with a lot of stuff on your mind and you might have made a misstep, right? You might have driven too fast. You might have rushed a yellow light trying to get through and it turned red. And if somebody had been coming, you could have caused an accident. You might have didn't properly check a blind spot before you changed lanes. And next thing you know, you hear a horn blowing at you because you're about to hit somebody and you didn't see them. Everybody on this planet that has ever driven a vehicle for any amount of time has experienced something like this, where they're in the shoes of being the person that the other person is probably angry with, right? But you're not a bad person, right? You didn't put them or yourself in that situation because you had bad intent. You were having a bad moment, right? So you would hope that whoever you potentially cut off or whoever you rear-ended. I've rear-ended somebody before. I ran into the back of someone. I was very distracted. I wasn't on my phone, but I was distracted. There were circumstances there. Doesn't excuse it, but I was distracted. I caused the wreck. I'm not a bad person, right? My intent was not to hurt, and fortunately, nobody got hurt. And fortunately, the person I rear-ended to, I was young, and I was a teenager, but they got out. They could tell I was shaken up by it, and they were an older person, and they were approaching this with the right mindset. Like, they didn't know what I had going on. They could see I was shook up. They could see that I didn't do that because I was driving recklessly. My focus wasn't there, and I was distracted, made a bad decision, and ran into the back of them. So they treated me the way that I hope to treat anybody else that I'm faced with in that situation, rather than getting out, ready to fight. What are you doing? We're calling the cops, blah, blah, blah. And I've had those scenarios as well. But the one in particular where I rear-ended somebody, it was my fault. I admitted that. But they treated me with compassion rather than the thinking that I'm the worst person in the world. They're ready to confront and fight me, right? So all that's to say, I've used the car analogy and the boat analogy, and the boat theory is where this is coming from. But let's dive into like other aspects of life or business or marriage or anything like that, and how this can, and in parenting, that's a big one, but how this theory and this mindset can apply to any of that. So I'm going to start off in business because I like talking about business. But throughout, like in my business, I talk to a lot of people every day. So I'm going to give a very recent example. I'm recording this on a Monday. So this example goes back to this past Friday. So 3 days ago, right? We had a loan application come in. Didn't recognize the borrower, but the numbers look pretty good. And usually what I do, my role in the company now, that, I mean, we have a flood of applications coming in every day, but usually my role is anything in Virginia that comes in, I am the first point of contact. I'm going to pick up a phone and I'm just going to have a conversation with that person and kind of screen them and see what their experience is, walk through the basics of a deal, stuff like that. Well, this loan application came in Friday, and it was Friday afternoon, and I called the individual. They pick up the phone, and right out of the gate, like my first impression was like, man, this person is very rude, right? They just had a very rude tone about them. It was, when I introduced who I was, they were very dismissive of whatever was going on and me and everything. And I said to them, well, I'm just calling because you applied earlier today for a loan, and I was just calling to start the process and talk through everything with you. And the person started lightening up a little bit, but was still very dismissive, kind of rushing me off the phone. And I was like, well, you applied for our loan. So my instinct in that moment, mentally, I didn't handle it very well. So I was like, this person's a jerk, right? They are like, I'm trying to provide a service that they requested, and they're blowing me off. Well, I think this was at like noon or maybe a little bit after noon on Friday. By the end of the call, which was only a couple minutes, I said, well, would it be better later today? Do you have any time? And he said, yes, 2:30. I said, how about you call me at 2:30 and we'll go from there? And he said, sounds good. Got off the phone. So again, my instinct is that was not very pleasant. And to me as a lender, I'm like, that's kind of a red flag. I don't expect everybody to have, be the savviest communicator on the planet, but I do expect them to be decent and have a bit of an ability to be kind and at least answer questions, things like that. Well, fast forward, 2:30 comes around, and no phone call. 3:00 comes around, no phone call. Rest of the day goes by. About 6, and at this point, I'm like, all right, he first didn't communicate very well. Second of all, we had a time to talk set up, and he didn't do as he told me he would on that. So in my mind, my boat has been hit by another boat with somebody driving it. So I'm responding not great, right? Later that evening, probably 8:00 that evening, this person's business partner texts me, introduced themselves. I'm so-and-so's business partner. He told me you called earlier. Sorry he didn't get back with you. He had something personal come up right before you called him. So he was in the middle of dealing with that. Now, at this point, I had not expressed to any of them that I was not happy with how that person communicated to me. So he didn't have any reason to think that I was feeling any certain way about it. He gave me what had happened. The person had had something happen. It wasn't pleasant. Didn't go into details, but it was a personal thing, and it literally consumed the rest of his day. But this guy said, I want to reach out on his behalf. If we can just get a call scheduled on Monday, we'd very much appreciate it. We scheduled the call this morning. We had the call. Everybody was great. The deal was great. They are excellent, like on paper, excellent borrowers, all that stuff. The individual apologized for being short with me that day. And again, I hadn't expressed that I was frustrated with that. He said, literally 10 minutes before I called, he found out something personally that he had to deal with. It was a family matter, and it had him very distracted. And that's why he was kind of quick to get off the phone. And that's why he wasn't, when he told me he called me at 2:30, his intent was to do so, but everything that was going on personally drug on through the rest of the day. So all that is to say, had I taken the right approach in that initial phone call and been like, all right, I don't know what that was, but he must be having a bad day or something going on, but everything's good. We'll figure it out. I'll talk to him later. Had I taken that approach, I wouldn't have had, every time I thought about that loan, I was almost dismissing it. Like, we're not doing this loan. This was bad communication, red flag right out of the gate. So that was the wrong approach. I was looking at that boat as somebody driving it. And in reality, what it was just a circumstance. And I just happened to be the one person that called him right after he found out something bad going on in his family. And he was under circumstances that he just wasn't able to articulate to me. He wasn't going to tell me, somebody he's never met, talked to, that something bad's going on in my family. He was just like, hey, can I call you later? And I could tell he was being kind of short, but there was reason behind it. So in business, again, I talk to people like this every day. And occasionally I do run across a situation where I hang up and I'm like, man, that person, that was a terrible conversation. They were awful to talk to. And I have been guilty of dismissing people because of that. But in reality, I have been that person before. If you catch me, if somebody catches me like at the end of a really stressful, bad day, and this is rare for me, but like it's just a bad day, and I answer a phone call at the end of the bad day, and they're trying to sell me something, even if I have like requested, a follow up or a call back on something, I'm probably not going to be, hey, how's it going? Thanks for calling. So happy you called. I'm probably going to be like, hey, it's late. Can we just catch up another day? Is there another time that I can call you back and stuff like that? And my tone is probably going to come off to them as rude, as dismissive of what they're calling about. I've been that person before. So the point is, if I approach when people are talking to me that way, if we all do this in business, with the idea that we don't know what's going on in their life. We don't know what just happened to them 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago. We don't know what kind of weight they are bearing that we know nothing about. And that's important information to know. Or to at least be aware of that those things. You don't have to know the information, but to be aware that these circumstances could exist, which could lead. Now, some people are just flat out rude and they're going to be jerks no matter what. Over time, you'll find that out. If I had talked to this guy again Monday and then again later this week, and every time he's just short with me and dismissive, then that's not a circumstance. That's just who he is, and that's going to be a difficult person to deal with. But given the benefit of the doubt, I just have to assume first conversation with this person, he might have been dealing with something. And I didn't do that on Friday. And it's a great real example, and me recording this podcast is a reminder to myself of how to handle those situations. Now, that's a business example. Say a couple other things in businesses, like in business, a lot of times, like you might be dealing with another business, right? So let's say like a lot of our transactions, we have to deal with title companies and closing attorneys, and they might be representing our borrower. So they're kind of in the middle and they don't want to hear our BS and all this stuff. So it's just shortened to the point. Like, I need this, this, and this. Have a good day. Bye. And where we might want to get to know them a little bit. We might want to have a conversation, and not everybody in every moment is like that. And it's kind of like, and I'm gonna go here in a minute talking about marriage, but I'll say this now. It's kind of like my wife and I, right? And any married couple hearing this knows that there's some days where one of you might be on top of the world, cloud nine, ready to just tackle and dominate the earth, right? The other one might be literally on the opposite end of the spectrum. Had a long day, tired, can't even think straight because so much stuff's been in their mind all day long. And, they come home to you on top of the world, happy as can be. They're not feeling it. And then y'all end up clashing because, one's feeling it, one's not. And it's a recipe for disaster when it comes to communication. The marriages that, and I'm not saying Katie and I are perfect with this, but the marriages that tend to work long term understand that there's going to be a lot, and probably more times than not, sometimes where you're not going to be on the same level of emotion and frequency and all that stuff at the end of the day, right? So you got to meet each other where you're at, and have some compassion and understanding that it's not always going to be the same, and not get mad when the person's not on the same level as you, but also not get mad when you're having kind of down in the dumps day and this person's on top of the world happy and it's annoying you. Not take away, like, not try to steal their excitement of the day because you've had a bad day. So it kind of works both ways. So I said I was going to talk about how it works in marriage. There's my little spiel on that. But in business, again, we're dealing with people all the time that you never know what they have going on at home. And God, I'm thinking back. Well, I can go on and on with examples, but I'm thinking about one in particular in my former career. This has been 15 years ago. But somebody I talked to regularly at our corporate office, um, and they were always happy, always friendly. We always caught up about family and stuff like that. And then I called them like 3 or 4 times within a 2-week period, and it wasn't that. It was very short. I could tell something was wrong, and I had kind of gotten close enough to this person by like the fourth time. Like I'm thinking, I'm building this story in my head. Did I do something to piss them off? Well, what's going on? And I'm stressing about, like, what did I do to make this person not be so happy and kind to me like they usually are? And after about third or fourth time, I got on the phone with them. We're talking. They're still being short. I said, everything all right? What's going on? Well, come to find out, it was a situation. I'm definitely not going to throw out names and stuff like that, but this person had something very difficult going on in their personal lives. And it had started like 2 weeks prior. And so they told me all that. And again, I'm sitting here thinking they're being a jerk. And all along, it was just, no, they were having a rough patch that continued for a while, but they got through it. And they just didn't have the energy to be at the level that I was or the level that they usually were. So another example. Several years ago, we had some leaders of the former company I work with, come down and put on, they were like sales leadership. And so I worked for like 2 different companies that were together as one, but one of the companies is based out of Mississippi, and occasionally they would send like people up to either do leadership training or, whatever, a bunch of different training. But one of them came up one time, showed a video, and I need to look this video up and share it because it was very impactful for me, but it kind of goes along with what I'm talking about with this boat theory. The video did not have any talking in it. It was just like gentle music playing, and it was like POV. My son says POV all the time, but it's like a point of view perspective of somebody walking through a hospital. And this video was made by the Cleveland Clinic. And I think it was at their location, was where it was filmed. But here's the video. So it's point of view. So you're looking at it like through an individual's eyes, and they're walking down a hallway, passing coworkers or like residents at the hospital, or patients, I should say, at the hospital. And everybody's looking at this person walking, right? So it's giving you the feel of you walking down the hospital hallway. And you walk by a doctor and he kind of nods at you with his head down, and then it puts a pop-up over his head. Just found out wife has 3 months to live due to cancer, right? Go to the next person. Older lady in a wheelchair, and she just kind of smiles and waves at you. Um, Pop up over her head. Husband just passed away 2 weeks ago, just diagnosed with blah, 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 right? She doesn't say anything, just waves. And it goes through about, literally the video goes through 30 people probably. And it's just a bunch of different people. Another one had a woman smiling, like a young lady smiling and nods and with a big smile on her face. Didn't say anything, pop up over her head. Just found out she's pregnant after 2 years of trying. Goes to the next person, like another woman later in the video, just had a miscarriage of her first baby. And all these people are walking around with different expressions on their faces, nodding, saying hi, whatever. And the point of the video was saying, we have no clue what battles everybody else in this world is fighting. And nobody has a clue what battles you're fighting except the people that you've shared those battles with. And I think about that video a lot, especially the more and more I interact with people on a daily basis. Nobody does a perfect job with handling life, right? And handling what life throws at them, right? You might have a bad thing happen over here and you carry the emotions from that bad thing to the next person you interact with. That person you interact with has no idea you're coming right off of something really bad. So they think you're a jerk because your energy didn't match theirs and you were very rude to them. And then that person gets put in a bad mood because they just had a rude interaction with you. They go home, deal with their spouse, and they're in a bad mood because they had that rude interaction with you. And it's kind of a snowball effect that impacts everybody. So the way I look at that is I try my very best to do a couple things. I want to stop that snowball. So if it makes it to me, and I didn't do that Friday, okay? The example I gave earlier, I did the opposite of that. That person being rude to me not knowing their circumstances, I didn't take a breath and think about it. So I probably spilled that over to somebody I interacted with later. I don't know if I did or not, but I may have. Rather than trying to stop that snowball and saying, all right, he probably maybe had something going on. I'm not going to let it impact my day. Let's get back after it. I'm happy and I'm going to interact with the world better today, despite that interaction, right? So what I try to do, and I think it's important for all of us to think this way, is realize that everybody, the boat that's empty, right? Everybody, now the boat scenario basically just talks about, again, you got mad about something that truly wasn't something to be mad about. The person rear-ending your car, you got mad at them only to find out they were rushing to see their child dying in the hospital. I know that sounds extreme, but it kind of makes my point. So think about every situation like, more than likely that person interacting with me negatively or aggressively, or they just ran into the back of me or just cut me off or was rude to me, spoke down to me, whatever it is, more than likely something is causing that. And they a lot of times aren't even aware of how they're speaking or acting or cutting you off or whatever it is. And because of that, I'm not going to let them bring down my mood and then let that mood go and impact somebody else negatively. If we could just operate from that mindset, that most of the people on earth, their intentions are good. Some just don't know how to communicate well. Some do communicate very well, but have bad moments and bad days. Some don't know how to drive very well. Some drive very well, but occasionally get distracted and run red lights. Not good, dangerous, but it does happen to all of us. So the boat theory kind of sets the stage for this idea of being a little more compassionate, a lot more compassionate with the folks you interact with on a daily basis. Appreciate when you're getting good energy, but also be compassionate when you're getting bad energy and look at it from the lens of this person might be having a bad day and that energy, they don't even know it, but it's getting directed at me. I'm going to give them some grace and I'm not going to carry that forward to the next person. That's the boat theory. So I think I made that point loud and clear with this episode, so I hope it helps somebody out there, and practice it. Try to pay attention as you go forward with your day of not only your mood, but those around you, and maybe dig a little bit. Ask questions to see if there is something. I could have asked that guy the other day, hey man, is something, everything okay? He might have told me right then, no, I just found out I had some bad news, blah, blah, blah. I didn't do that. I just got mad, right? I was mad and wanted to hang up on him. And only to find out he actually did have something bad happen. So with that, I'll wrap up another episode of Burning the Ships, Burning the Boats, the boat theory, all things boat today. And I hope it helps somebody out there. Share it with a friend, share it with your network. And like I always say, if this can impact one person, I've done my job, and I appreciate y'all following along and sharing. Thanks a lot and have a good day. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking the courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.